I serve him coffee, and he looked right through me like I was nothing. He insulted me in a language he thought I'd never understand. But when I whispered those 3 words back to him in perfect Korean, his entire world, and mine, shattered forever. This is a story about the secrets we carry and the power of a single voice. If you're ready for this journey of dangerous twists and deep emotion, hit subscribe right now. Don't miss. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every comment makes this story feel more real. The diner was almost empty at 3 a.m. She moved between the booths, wiping counters, the only sound the hum of the neon sign. Her feet ached. This was her life, quiet, hard, and invisible. Then, the bell on the door jangled. 5 men in expensive, dark suits walked in. They moved like shadows, filling the space with a cold silence. The man in front, their leader, had eyes that looked like stone. He sat in her section. She brought him water. He didn't look at her. He spoke in low Korean to his men, a rough, commanding sound. One of his men laughed at something he said. She kept working, used to being ignored by customers. But she felt his gaze follow her to the coffee machine. A chill went down her spine. She returned to take their order. The boss finally looked up at her. His expression was blank, like she was a piece of furniture. He spoke to her directly, but in Korean. His voice was a low growl. His men instantly stopped talking. The air got heavier. He wasn't just speaking. He was insulting her. The words were foreign, but their meaning was clear in his tone. Disgust, contempt. He called her slow. He muttered something about the dirt on the table. He said she had the hands of a tired old woman. His men watched, smirking, waiting for her reaction. She understood every single word. A deep, old sadness flickered in her eyes, buried under years of exhaustion. She didn't flinch. She didn't get angry. She just listened, her posture still, her hands steady at her sides. This wasn't the first time she'd heard such words. When he finished, a smug silence settled over his table. He expected fear, or tears, or confused stammering. He turned to dismiss her, already speaking to his men again. That's when she leaned forward just a little. She looked directly into those stone-cold eyes. Her voice was quiet, clear, and perfect. She spoke 3 words in flawless, native Korean. I hear you. The smirk vanished from his face. The silence now was electric, shocked. His men froze, their cups halfway to their lips. She turned and walked back to the counter, leaving a room full of dangerous men utterly stunned. He couldn't move. Those 3 words, in the dialect of his hometown, spoken by her here, locked his joints. His men felt the shift. Their relaxed sneers tightened into alert masks. Their hands drifted closer to their jackets. He held up a single finger, commanding stillness. His eyes never left her back as she poured coffee behind the counter. He stood up. The chair scraped loudly. He walked slowly to the counter. She didn't turn around. He spoke, his voice lower now, stripped of its mocking edge. Where did you learn that? He asked in Korean. She placed the coffee pot down carefully. She finally faced him. The deep sadness was still there, but now it was mixed with a weary defiance. A place far from here, she answered in his language. A long time ago. She saw the questions storming behind his eyes. Who was she? A spy? A cop? Something else? Your order will be ready soon, she said, switching back to perfect, unaccented English, breaking the spell for his listening men. He returned to his booth, but the dynamic was shattered. He was no longer just a boss insulting staff. He was a man who had encountered a mystery. His men ate in confused silence. He just stared at his untouched food. When the bill came, he left 5 $100 bills under the plate. Far too much. She cleared the table after they left. Under the money was a plain, white business card. No name. Just a single, embossed phone number. She picked it up. Her hands, which he had insulted, did not shake. She tucked the card deep into her apron pocket. The night felt different now. At home, a small, worn apartment, she pulled out the card. She sat at her kitchen table, holding it under the dim light. She then opened a locked drawer. Inside was a faded photograph of a little girl holding the hand of a Korean woman in a sunny field. She looked from the photo to the card. A single tear fell, but her jaw was set. He sat in his office, a sleek room high above the city. The diner's neon sign was a tiny smear of color in the distance. He couldn't focus on the ledger in front of him. Her face, her voice, those 3 words, played on a loop. It was a vulnerability he hadn't felt in decades. He called his most trusted lieutenant. "I want information on the waitress at the all-night diner on 7th. The black woman. Everything. Where she lives, where she's from, her family. Do not be seen." His lieutenant, a man named Carl, nodded, hiding his surprise. The boss never asked about civilians. She went to her day job, a clerk at a laundromat. The work was monotonous, folding other people's clothes. Her mind was elsewhere in another country, another lifetime. A kind older customer, Mrs. Henderson, noticed. "You seem a million miles away, dear." She just offered a faint smile. "Just tired." Carl's report came that evening. It was surprisingly thin. She lived alone, paid her taxes, quiet, originally from Ohio. Parents deceased. No criminal record. It was the biography of a ghost. "There's nothing there, boss," Carl said. The boss felt this was wrong. A person who speaks like she did does not come from nothing. That night, he went back to the diner. Alone. She saw him the moment he entered. Her body went still for a second, then she continued wiping the same spot on the counter. He took the same booth. This time, the silence was a tense wire between them. She brought him coffee, without asking. She met his gaze. "You forgot something?" she asked in English. He pushed an envelope across the table. "Not money. Inside is the address of a better restaurant. The owner is a friend. The pay is double. The work is days." It was an offer, wrapped in a command. She didn't touch the envelope. "I don't need your help." Her Korean was soft but firm. He leaned forward. "Everyone needs help," he replied. "Why are you here, in this place, when you could be more?" He was asking the question that had haunted him for 24 hours. She looked at the envelope, then back at him. "Some people try to run from their past. Others," she said, "are just waiting for it to find them." Her words were a punch to his gut. Waiting for it to find them. He knew that feeling intimately. The envelope remained on the table between them, a silent peace offering he now realized was an insult. He slowly pulled it back. "What is your name?" he asked, the formal Korean grammar polite, respectful. She was taken aback. The harsh boss was gone, replaced by a man who seemed genuinely lost. "Clara," she said. He repeated it, the English name feeling strange in his mouth. "My mother called me Mi-young," she added quietly, almost to herself. It was a piece of her soul, offered without reason. Mi-young, a beautiful Korean name. The puzzle pieces spun in his head, forming no clear picture. "Who gave you that name?" "The woman who raised me," Clara said. "For a little while." She picked up his empty cup, signaling the end of the conversation. "The past is a locked room, sir. Some doors are better left closed." He left, but he was hooked. This was no longer just curiosity. It felt like fate, or a ghost from a life he'd buried. He drove to a secure storage unit. Inside, among other secrets, was a small box from his early days in Korea before the power before America. Meanwhile, Clara closed up the diner. She walked home, feeling his eyes on her even though he was gone. She took a different, longer route, her heart pounding. At her apartment door, she paused. A single, fresh white rose lay on the mat. No note, a gesture of apology, or a marker. She brought it inside, her emotions a tangled storm. She put the rose in water. Then, she did something she hadn't done in years. She knelt by her bed and pulled out an old suitcase. Inside, beneath winter clothes, was a small, hand-sewn Korean hanbok, child-sized, and a journal with a leather cover. She traced the faded embroidery with her finger. He opened the old box. Dust floated in the air. Inside were photographs of a younger him, smiling with people he had forced himself to forget. And there were letters. One, in particular, was from a woman he had once loved a lifetime ago. She had worked at an orphanage. Her last letter spoke of a new child, a little girl from America who was struggling, who she had named Myung for hope. The blood drained from his face. The dates, the name, it couldn't be a coincidence. The woman he loved had died suddenly. The orphanage closed. He had been climbing his criminal ladder, too busy, too hard to respond to her pleas for help. Guilt, old and rotting, flooded him. Was Clara that child? He returned to the diner at dawn. Clara was outside, taking out the trash. She saw his car and froze. He got out, not in a suit, but in simpler clothes. He looked older, haunted. He held no envelope, no rose. Just the faded photograph of the woman from the orphanage. He showed it to her silently. Clara's breath hitched. She reached for the photo, her fingers trembling for the first time. So young, she whispered, the name a prayer. Tears welled in her eyes. You knew her? The boss, this dangerous man, nodded, his own eyes glistening. A very long time ago. They sat in his car, the engine off. He told her of the woman, so young, her kindness, her laughter. Clara spoke of a brief, golden year of feeling safe, of learning the language and the songs, before it was all ripped away. They were connected by a ghost, by a shared love for the same lost person. He drove her home. The silence was now comfortable, filled with understanding. At her door, he said, "The man who insulted you in the diner. That man is sorry." She nodded. The waitress who heard him, she accepts. It was a fragile truce. As he left, a black sedan with tinted windows, unconnected to him, slowly cruised past her building. The black sedan was noted by Carl, who was discreetly watching Clara's apartment on the boss's orders. He ran the plates. They came back to a shell company, but Carl knew the streets. It was linked to the Volkov family, a rival Russian outfit trying to move in on their territory. This was bad. Clara had been marked, not by them, but by their enemies. The boss was furious, but cold. His world was violence. Hers was not. He called her from a secure phone. "You will not go to work tonight. Tell your boss you are sick. My man will bring you groceries." Clara protested. "I can't hide in my apartment forever because of your world." "It is not my world that left a rose at your door," he said sharply. The rose. She hadn't told him about it. A chill went through her. "How did you know?" He sighed. "I didn't. I sent no rose. That was them. A message to me. They're saying they found something I care about." The word care hung heavily in the air. She agreed to stay put, fear finally cutting through her pride. Carl delivered bags of food. He was polite, almost fatherly. "The boss, he's different since he met you. Cautious." Clara didn't know what to do with that information. She was now a pawn in a war she didn't understand. The boss set a meeting with the Volkov lieutenant, a man named Dmitri. It was in a public park, neutral ground. "The woman is not involved," the boss stated, his voice deadly calm. Dmitri smiled. "A cruel slash. Everything connected to you is involved. She is a weakness. We see you visit her. We see you soften." The threat was clear. The boss's old self would have responded with immediate, brutal force. But now, he thought of Clara's safety first. "You touch her, and your entire operation burns to the ground." Not a threat, a promise. He walked away, knowing a line had been drawn. War was coming, and Clara was at the center. Clara, in her apartment, felt caged. She looked at the old hanbok, at So Young's photo. She had survived loss before. She would not be a victim again. She took the business card with a number and sent a simple text message. "I am not safe here." His reply was instant. "I know. We are fixing it. Do not open the door for anyone." He made a decision that shocked his own organization. He moved Clara, not to a safe house, but into his own home, the penthouse fortress at the top of his building. His men were confused. This was an unprecedented risk. She stays in the guest wing. She sees nothing, hears nothing. She is a ghost, he commanded. Clara entered a world of silent luxury and unspoken danger. The view was breathtaking, the furnishings cold and modern. It felt like a beautiful cage. He was often gone, but he always returned for dinner. They ate together in silence at first, then slowly began to talk. Of books, of simple things, never of the past or the dangerous present. He saw her looking at his large, empty bookshelves. The next day, a delivery arrived, a box of novels, classics, and modern bestsellers. He remembered a comment she'd made about liking mysteries. It was a thoughtful gesture, utterly alien to his nature. Clara felt a confusing warmth in her chest. Carl became her uneasy guardian. He taught her the security system. Panic button here. Safe room there. Boss's orders. She learned the layout. One afternoon, she accidentally walked past a closed door and heard the boss's voice, furious, speaking in Russian. She heard her own name. She quickly retreated, her heart pounding. That night at dinner, he was distant, coiled tight with anger. She finally asked, what did they want? The Russians. He put his fork down. They want a shipment route. A very valuable one. They think by threatening you, they can force me to give it. Will you? She asked. He looked at her, his stone eyes softening just at the edges. No. I will end them instead. It was the brutality of his statement, said so calmly, that made her realize the true depth of the ocean she was in. This was not a man who could leave his life. This was the life itself. She was not just a waitress he was protecting. She was becoming the one thing he had to lose. The tension in the penthouse was a living thing. Clara felt like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending violent ripples through his world. She found him one night standing on the vast terrace, staring at the city. I want to help, she said. He didn't turn. You help by staying alive. I lived a life before this, she said, her voice firm. I know how to be invisible, how to listen. Maybe I can hear something you can't. He finally looked at her. The idea was insane. Letting her near the operation was the opposite of protection. But he also knew she was withering in this gilded cage. And her mind was sharp. He gave her a single controlled task. Using a secure laptop, she would monitor police scanners and social media chatter in the Volkov territory, looking for patterns. It made her feel useful. She was good at it, her eye for details spotting anomalies his men missed. She found a reference to a meet at an old warehouse, mentioned in a teen's casual tweet about weird fancy cars. He acted on her information. The raid on the warehouse was a success, intercepting a minor Volkov weapons deal. It was a slap, not a knockout, but it proved her value. When he told her, a small, proud smile touched her lips. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. It hit him harder than any enemy's blow. Dmitry Volkov was enraged. The boss was hitting back too precisely. He knew there was a new element, an insider. His suspicion turned to the weakness, the waitress. He sent a team to surveil the boss's building. They took pictures from a van. One photo, grainy but clear, showed Clara and the boss on the terrace, standing close, not speaking, just looking out together. Dmitry had his proof. The weakness was not just a hostage, it was a connection. He devised a new plan. Not to kidnap her, but to shatter the connection from within. He would use the past as a weapon. He dug deeper into Clara's history, past the simple American records, reaching into the murky aftermath of the Korean orphanage. Back in the penthouse, Clara was researching too, but for herself. She used the boss's secure resources to finally search for records of So-young's orphanage, its closure, and the dispersal of the children. She found a name she didn't recognize, a Korean agency that handled international adoptions after the shutdown. A point of contact. She wrote it down, her hand shaking with a mix of fear and hope. Clara requested a meeting. She showed him the name of the adoption agency. I need to know what happened, she said, her eyes pleading but strong. I need to know why I was sent away, who my parents really were. This is the only lead I've ever had. He saw the decades of loneliness in her request. He couldn't refuse. He tasked Carl with contacting the agency through legitimate channels, posing as a researcher. The answer was slow in coming, a bureaucratic puzzle. The waiting was agony for Clara. Their shared meals became quieter, the weight of their separate pasts pressing down. He told her more about So-young, about the good man he was trying to be before power corrupted him. One evening, she asked him, "What is your name? Your real name?" He paused, a man who hadn't used his birth name in 30 years. "Jun-ho," he said softly. She repeated it. "Jun-ho." In her mouth, it didn't sound like a monster's name. It sounded human. Dimitri's dig into Korea paid off. He didn't find adoption records. He found something messier more useful. A scandal. A child trafficking ring that had used the orphanage as a front years ago. So-young had been a legitimate social worker, but the man who ran the place was corrupt. Dimitri fabricated documents suggesting Jun-ho was involved, that his money had funded the ring. The package arrived at Clara's old apartment, forwarded by a confused landlord. It was addressed to Mi-young. Inside were the fabricated documents, along with real, heartbreaking photos of scared children from the era. A note, typed, read, "Ask your protector where the money for his first business really came from. Ask him about the children." Clara read them in her room in the penthouse. The world tilted. The photos were undeniably real. The documents looked official. The connection between Jun-ho's early rise and the corrupted orphanage was laid out in cold detail. The man who had shown her kindness, who had known So-young, was now painted as the monster who destroyed her childhood. She confronted him in his study, papers in hand, tears of betrayal in her eyes. "Is it true? Were you part of this?" She shoved the photos at him. Jun-ho looked at them, and his face went pale with a horror she had never seen. It wasn't the look of a man caught. It was the look of a man seeing a nightmare he thought was buried. Jun-ho took the papers. His hands were steady, but a muscle in his jaw twitched violently. He read the lies crafted by Dimitri. The horror on his face wasn't from guilt, but from the sheer, evil brilliance of the attack. They hadn't threatened her body. They had poisoned her mind against him. They had taken the one good memory they shared, So-young, and made it rotten. "These are lies," he said, his voice gravelly with emotion. "The man who ran that ring was a snake named Park. I found out what he was doing to So-young's work, to those children, years after she died. I made him disappear." He looked at her, his eyes begging her to see the truth. "The money I used came from him. I took it from him. It was blood money, yes, but it was his blood." Clara wanted to believe him. The man in front of her, laid bare, felt true. But the photos, the official-looking stamps, the seed of doubt was deep. "How do I know?" she whispered, her heart breaking. "You live in a world of lies. How can I know what's real?" He had no good answer. His word was law in his kingdom, but it meant nothing in the court of her heart. "The only thing that is real," he said, walking to his wall safe, "is this." He pulled out the old, real letter from So-young, the one mentioning a little girl named Mi-young. He handed it to Clara. The handwriting was the same as the gentle notes So-young used to leave on her pillow. The love in the words was undeniable. In the letter, So-young wrote of her fears about the bad man running the orphanage and her hope to get the children to safety. She wrote of her disappointment that Jun-ho was too busy to help. It was the painful, complicated truth. Clara sank into a chair, the real letter in one hand, the fake documents in the other. The contrast was clear. One was love, the other was hate. She started to cry, from relief and from shame for doubting him. "I'm sorry," she said. He knelt before her, a powerful king brought to his knees. Never be sorry for asking for the truth. In that moment, the last wall between them fell. The threat had tried to break them apart, but instead it forged a deeper bond. He now knew he would burn down the entire city to keep her safe. And she knew, with terrifying certainty, that she was in love with a man the world saw as a monster. Outside, Dimitri's men watched the building, waiting for the fracture. They saw nothing. The light in the penthouse remained on, two silhouettes talking through the night, closer now than ever. The shared understanding from the letter changed everything. The penthouse was no longer a prison, but a bunker where they were on the same side. He started sharing pieces of his daily world with her, not the violence, but the strategy. She became his secret advisor, her perspective from outside his world, spotting flaws in his plans. He trusted her mind completely. Dmitri was confused and angry. The expected rupture never happened. His surveillance showed calm. He decided to escalate. He would force the boss's hand by attacking something he could not ignore, not the woman but his business. A midnight raid was set for the boss's most legitimate front, a downtown import warehouse. Junho's men got a tip, but it was late. A bloody fight erupted at the warehouse. From the penthouse, Clara heard the tense phone calls, saw Junho's face turn to granite. He began giving orders, putting on a bulletproof vest. She saw the transformation from the man she knew back into the warlord. As he headed for the door, she stopped him. "They want you there. They want you angry and away from here." He knew she was right, but his men were under fire. "It's a trap for me," she insisted. "They think you'll leave me to go fight. Please." The word please held a new vulnerability. He stayed. He stayed, but the warehouse burned. The financial loss was huge. His men felt his absence as weakness. Rumors spread in his organization. The boss was compromised by a woman. An old-school captain, a man named Marco, came to the penthouse to confront him. Clara listened from the next room. Marco's voice was loud, angry. "We are bleeding money and respect. Over what? A waitress? This is not the man I followed." Junho's response was chillingly quiet. "The man you followed would have already shot you for that tone." "I am still that man. But my priorities have changed. Adapt or leave." Clara heard the threat in his words, not to her, but to his own empire. She was destroying him from the inside, not by her actions, but simply by existing. That night, she told him she needed to leave, to go somewhere the Russians couldn't use her against him. He refused. "You are safest where I can see you." The emotional tension turned into something else. A quiet evening spent looking at the city lights, their shoulders nearly touching. A moment where his hand brushed hers, and neither pulled away. It was a slow, terrifying acknowledgement of a feeling both had buried for years. It was more dangerous than any rival gang. Carl, ever loyal, found the source of Dmitri's information, a corrupt city clerk who had access to sealed adoption records. Junho dealt with it personally, but not with violence. He used blackmail of his own, turning the clerk into a double agent. They began feeding Dmitri false information about Clara being moved to a country house that weekend. Dmitri took the bait. He pulled his men from the city penthouse surveillance to prepare an ambush on the rural road. This was the opening Junho needed. While Dmitri's strength was diverted, Junho's men hit 3 key Volkov operations in the city simultaneously, crippling their cash flow and supply. Clara, however, was not in the penthouse. Disguised in a baseball cap and driving a beat-up sedan with Carl, she was doing something brave and foolish. Using the information from the real adoption agency, she went to meet the retired social worker who had finalized her case after So Young's death. She needed her own answers, on her own terms. The meeting was in a quiet suburban coffee shop. The elderly woman, Mrs. Park, recognized the name Mi Young immediately. With tears, she told Clara a fragment of the truth. "You were not trafficked. Your mother was an American student. She died. Your father, he was a Korean man from a powerful, dangerous family. She hid you to protect you. So Young tried to protect you too." Clara returned, her mind reeling. A dangerous Korean family. She looked at Junho with new, fearful eyes. Could it be? Was this twisted circle even smaller? She didn't have the courage to ask. Instead, she focused on the present danger. The trap for Dmitri was set. Dmitri, humiliated by the city raids, was furious. He knew he'd been tricked. In a rage, he decided on a direct, brutal assault. He would storm the penthouse. He no longer cared about subtlety. He gathered every remaining loyal soldier for a final, all-or-nothing attack. Junho's security systems picked up the massing threat. He calmly moved Clara to the panic room, a steel-walled chamber hidden behind a bookcase. No matter what you hear, you do not open this door unless you hear my voice saying the code word Soyum. Do you understand? She nodded, terrified for him. The assault came at dawn. Dimitri's men crashed through the lobby, firing. Junho's guards, prepared, fought back floor by floor. The penthouse became a war zone. Clara heard the muffled booms and cracks of gunfire through the thick walls. She sat in the dark, holding So-young's letter, praying for the first time in years. The gunfire stopped. An awful silence followed. Clara waited, her heart pounding in her ears. Then, heavy footsteps approached the bookcase. A voice, rough and battered, called out, "Clara." It was Junho, but he didn't say the code word. She stayed silent, frozen. The voice came again, more insistent. "Clara, it's over. Open the door." It sounded like him, but something was off, a faint, hard edge of triumph that didn't fit. She pressed her eye to the hidden peephole. She saw Junho, blood on his shirt, standing. And behind him, partly hidden, was Dimitri, holding a gun to Junho's back. It was a trap. They had captured him and forced him to call her out. Her blood ran cold. Dimitri smirked. "Open up, little bird, or we kill him right here." Junho's eyes met the peephole. In them, she saw no fear, only a fierce, desperate warning. "Don't." She made a choice. She took a deep breath. In a loud, clear voice, she spoke the three words that had started it all, but now in English, for Dimitri to understand. "I hear you." It was their signal. Junho, with his last reserve of strength, dropped to the floor. The moment he moved, Clara hit the panic button. Not just for the police, it was linked to Carl's team, waiting one floor down. The hidden elevator at the back of the panic room opened, and 4 of Junho's most loyal men stormed out behind Dimitri. The final, brief, and brutal fight was over in seconds. In the aftermath, Clara ran to Junho. He was wounded but alive. He looked up at her, his hard face softened with awe. "You listened," he breathed. She helped him up. "I always do." With the Volkov threat obliterated, his organization was secure again, but Junho was changed. He looked at his empire and saw only its cost. Weeks later, in a quiet moment, Clara finally asked him the question about her father. He took her hand. "I do not know who he was, but I know this. Your past does not own you. We can choose what happens next." He chose to step down. He handed the legitimate businesses to trusted men like Carl and walked away from the rest. The final scene is not a dramatic goodbye, but a quiet beginning. They are at the airport, tickets in hand to a place with no name. Not as a boss and a waitress, but as Junho and Clara, 2 damaged people who found a second chance not in running from the past, but in facing it together. They walk towards the gate, side by side, his hand firmly holding hers, finally free.